Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining this webinar today. My name is Pelin from BSI Marketing Team, and I'm here today to facilitate this webinar. Before we start, I would like to provide some ground rules. You all joined this webinar as listen-only mode, but please feel free typing in your questions in the question box on the webinar control panel. Our speakers will do their best to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. Due to time limits, if your question is not answered, we will provide you with the answers after the session. This webinar is being recorded, and you will have all received the recording shortly after this session. With me today, there is our valued guest speaker from KEO International Consultants, Regional Digital Design Manager, Juan Tena Florez, and BSI Built Environment Sector Development Director for EMEA region, Raul Shah. Juan has over 16 years of professional experience in BIM implementation, strategic planning, and standardization of processes in line with the new ISO 19650 standard and its previous versions, as well as Parametric digital design delivery. Additionally, Juan has a vast experience with the US BIM standards. At KEO International Consultants, Juan led the BIM Kite Mark certification project. And Raul, for over 23 years, has held leadership roles responsible for digital transformation and innovation strategy and implementation, including a diverse range of projects, including large-scale, multi-billion-pound urban regeneration schemes. He's gained a thorough understanding of the risks and opportunities faced by today's global construction business while going through digitalization. His current role involves supporting clients in digital trust, innovation, BIM, digital twins, smart cities, IoT, and information security and resilience. Before we move to our webinar, I would like to run a very short survey to understand more who is our audience today. Please select your answer, and then our webinar will begin. Thank you again for joining today. And now it's over to Juan. He's going to provide you more insights about KEO International Consultants.
Thank you, Pelin, for the introduction. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this talk. It's great to have the opportunity to have this conversation with Rahul and to have the opportunity to share our experiences and our knowledge about how do we use BIM, how we use BIM across the project life cycle. So first of all, we like to do a quick introduction about KEO, about what we do and how to get for you to know us a little bit in case that you don't know KEO International Consultants. KEO is made of 3 allied practices in addition to the main practice, where we provide from design, infrastructure, project and construction management, sustainability services. If you go to the next slide, Pelin, as well with our allied practices inside, who is responsible for planning and landscape, Sequest as the independent cost consultant, and the Black Mule, where it is our digital advisory services. Similarly, we've been awarded as well with different recognition by different companies, from like building design as one of the top largest practices, the largest in the Middle East, and as a top 10 in certain market sectors and specialists. If you go to the next slide, please. Similarly, with the Engineering News Record, for the last 18 years, we've been ranked as well as the top 225 international design firms and the top 20 global PMCM and non-US PMCM firms. Next slide, please. Something really important to us, to KEO, is about the people. We have people from more than 40 different countries who are sitting in 8 main different offices here in the Middle East mainly, plus one office that we opened since beginning of last year. And we have also experience not only in the Middle East, but in other countries across the world. Next slide, please. Similarly, to the achievements that we have done as a company, we've been achieving other awards at the personal level and project level that has been recognized by the industry in some of these awards that you can see on the screen. Next slide. In terms of our journey, KEO started this journey in 2009, so more than 13 years ago. And as a statement from our president and chief and CEO, Ms. Donna Sultan, we are a high-end technology-driven firm, and we cannot afford to sit still and not to continue to adopt, acquire, and master the latest in management, communication, and project delivery know-how. And that includes as well the use of technology for delivery of our projects, as well as the management of our projects. Next slide, please. Similarly, with this journey, since we started, we've been as well getting more experience in the implementation and use of standards. And since the release of the ISO 19650 standard by the end of the year 2018, we focused on getting the certification from BSI as the BSI Guidemar certificate, which certifies that we follow the processes and the standards in alignment with the ISO 19650 framework, and how do we apply them in the projects that we deliver at KEO. And similarly, we have a number of team members who are similarly certified as being project information practitioners and being project management practitioners. Next slide, please. And finally, something that, as we've been lucky enough to be successful internally in implementing BIM, and in addition to BIM, other technologies, that expertise that we have successfully delivered in-house, we similarly since last year, we have raised our digital advisory services, where all the different achievements that we got internally, we are similarly delivering externally to asset owners, to clients, to end users, as well as other stakeholders in the supply chain. Next slide, please. And this is just a sample of some of the projects that we have delivered here in the region, as most of them we are involved into some of the most important mega projects and here projects here in the region. Next slide. I think that's this is the last slide. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Juan, for this introduction about KEO. Now I would like to invite Raul to the conversation to discuss more about your BIM journey.
Thank you, Pauline. And first of all, thank you so much, Juan, for being with us here today and sharing some insights on who KEO is and, the different sectors that you operate in. That's quite a range of services you provide, right from the design, master planning, cost management, project management, and so forth, sustainability services. So it would be great to unpack some of the services that you provide as part of this conversation and how you use digital technology. But before we dive into that technology conversation, Juan, I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about your own personal BIM journey. How did it start for you, and where are you now? So if you could please help us a little bit there to understand, that would be great.
Yeah, so happy to provide some light on that. I studied architecture, so I am an architect as my profession, And during my studies in architecture, I actually started drafting on a paper, on a big desk, drafting like some people might have done in the past. And initially, as part of that shifting process of drafting on paper to drafting on computers, I realized of the opportunity and I came across different softwares, different tools, which could help me into being more optimal in the way that I did my designs and how I could present my designs during my architectural studies. And I actually started in 2001 using one of the different tools. As you may know, BIM is not about only the use of the tools, but BIM started at the point that it was initially as seen as a 3D visual representation. But we'll get to the point that we'll understand a bit more that is much more than just a 3D model. So during my studies, I did use different tools to help me be more efficient and to better design my projects. Once I finished my studies, I actually specialized doing a master's degree on this topic, and I was lucky to implement BIM in the company where I work in Spain, and we use BIM across some of the projects. At that point of time is when we started to see the release of international standards that you can find out the first countries who released them, like Singapore, Hong Kong, or the UK. And while getting familiar with these standards, we continue to deliver our projects using the tools and getting familiar on these processes, which help us to be more efficient in the way that we collaborate, that we coordinate with other consultants, with all the different stakeholders involved in the process. And since I moved here to the Middle East in 2014, similarly, I got into more specialization of BIM management. And with the increased demand from clients and from authorities on having this expertise within companies, I started to specialize more on that. It's something that I enjoy doing because something that I really like is about sharing knowledge that I have on how can we help others to be more efficient, to better collaborate, to better communicate. And here within KEO, I've been almost six years now in KEO. Next month will be my 6th year. The range of projects that we've been doing, the different companies that we collaborate with companies across all over the world, from consultants in the US, in Australia, and the relevance of all of us talking the same language of making easier the way that we collaborate, that how we communicate, how we coordinate is something that we've been pushing a lot internally. So all of that has been driven by the standards, which have helped us to actually speak the same language.
Wow, that's quite quite fascinating journey. Almost 20 years, Juan. Right, started from hand drafting. That resonates quite well with me. You know, in my early days, you know, drafting, you know, on paper, all the way through to computer drafting, 2D CAD, and then it's interesting to hear that you saw that 3D visualizations and modeling as a way of expressing your architectural sort of, you know, sort of studies and vision and designs, right? You know, you started with the 3-dimensional space first to better represent your designs, and then moved into sort of more process-led, standards-led approach, which is where you are now at KEO, and we'll talk about that, you know, as part of the conversation. You mentioned earlier that, you know, the BSI certifications and ISO 19350. I'm really interested in unpacking that as well as part of the conversation. So you're saying that the industry is now moved on from that seeing, well, yeah, BIM as a 3D modeling, purely 3D modeling tool, to more of a data-driven, sort of process-driven tool or process now in the industry?
Yes, definitely something that with increased maturity of the clients, of the authorities, who are in my opinion, the main drivers for the industry to move forward. And we know that the AEC industry is not one of the highest adopters of technology compared to other industries. And the main drivers that are pushing nowadays, it depends on which part of the world you are. You will see a rapid adoption of BIM as well as other technologies. And I believe that this is being driven by clients, by owners, and by authorities. And this is what we are seeing here in the Middle East, where we do most of our work, that the clients are the ones who are getting more expertise in-house, are demanding, of course, the different objectives from the BIM models, not only to be as a production of the drawings, as most people might see it, but of course to be used across all the product life cycle, during design, to do a proper transition to construction, and finally to use all of that through facility management and operations.
Okay, fantastic. It's great to hear that the trend has started, shifted that, from the 3D CAD into more data-driven. So help us understand, Juan. You mentioned in your introduction, KEO, that it's a high-end technology firm, right, with a vision to embrace always, the latest digital technologies in terms of improving efficiencies, productivities, but also offer better services to your clients, right? That has been sort of, a vision, constant drive at KEO. Help us understand, how does this BIM fit within KEO's overall strategy?
So it's something that we are, as you said, very proactive in the use and implementation of technologies. And we saw how advanced we were when the pandemic started. We'll have to shift to a different way of working. And we had a smooth transition of working, as we all know, from office to working from home to working from anywhere. And actually, our proactivity on implementing different systems to enhance collaboration and communication being done from anywhere, from any device, is something that helps us to move forward. And it's something that we keep being proactive on that sense. So we like to see us being at the forefront of the technology adoption, and not only the technology, but similarly as well the use of the standards. All of that has a lot of relevance for us internally, but similarly externally, for us it's important that we share these experiences by maturing other stakeholders, as I said, authorities, asset owners, or other consultants or contractors, is as important as increasing our maturity, because we work collaboratively across different stakeholders. So that's also really important, that we don't keep that only to us, but we share all that knowledge and experience so that others also will benefit from our proactivity and early adoption.
Interesting. And thanks, Juan. So you mentioned a couple of things there that I'd like to zoom into. One is collaboration. You said you collaborate with wider stakeholders, in your day-to-day activities, and you were saying that BIM offers benefits to wider stakeholders, as part of your regular engagement. Could you please help us understand a little bit more, maybe with some examples, and how, what are some of the exact benefits that BIM offers or can offer to KEO, to your clients, or to the stakeholders that you're collaborating with?
Internally, the benefits that we see of implementing BIM is cross collaboration and integration with other practices. So as you have seen, we're a multidisciplinary firm. We have from design consultants, master planning, landscape, infrastructure, cost consultancy, sustainability. So we ensure that we use what we produce is not being duplicated, information that we produce, or the different tools that we are using are properly exchanging the information between all of them so that we optimize our resources. It's really important for us to be efficient, not just for the sake of the efficiency of producing the information and the feedback that we give back to the clients, but also for being more sustainable. Something that I insist as well when we talk about the implementation of BIM is that how it helps sustainability, how it reduces the waste, and how actually can help us widely on to be more optimal on the use of the resources that we have. We think that by, as an example, sending an email or exchanging certain information, all of that can be a waste of energy as well. All of that data that we produce has to be stored somewhere, and all of that is consuming energy from the data center where it is hosted. So in that sense, we are also very mindful that we don't create much waste that may affect at the end of the day on how we see our world, and that the resources are limited. So we have to be cautious of that as well.
Fantastic. I would love to elaborate a little bit more on sustainability and the whole waste conversation you just mentioned. So we'll come back to that in a minute, Juan. But you know, KEO being, I'm really curious about this now. You know, KEO being a multi-discipline, you mentioned just now. You know, BIM helps you collaborate internal departments, internal teams, and being multidisciplinary business. I'm really curious to understand, you know, what's your approach to implementing BIM from day one, you know, when the bid comes in, project, you know, during the bidding process. But once you win the bid, once you win the project, then what happens? And just walk us through, you know, a typical journey of your approach to implementing BIM, right from bidding stage all the way through to, you know, winning, post-win, and what happens, and so forth.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and something that it has helped us a lot is about the adoption of the ISO 19650 standards on driving that processes. Of course, taking one step back, it is important when doing any implementation of any technology is to have clear the vision of where do you want to go, what are the objectives that you want to achieve. And when we started this journey, we clearly have a direction how we wanted to do align our processes and our standards with the use of the technology. And in that sense, we align all these processes with the ISO standards. And in that sense, whenever we have a new bid coming, we provide a tender response, which provide information about our mobilization plans, our pre-contract payment execution plans, which includes on how do we want to structure our information, how are we planning to collaborate, how are we planning to coordinate, how are we planning to do proper information exchange between the different parties, a set of responses that will give a client an understanding on what is our approach of delivering BIM across not only the design, but how the transition to construction and operations will be realized as well. And similarly, also to provide the evidence of our experience and expertise, we always provide our BSI Catman certificate, which provides a good evidence to our clients to rely on our expertise. And once we get a project awarded, after this pre-tender tender response, we produce all of our documents during design, which are usually the post-contract payment execution plan, including the collaboration procedures, how are we going to coordinate between the different parties, how are we going to deliver the project by providing a definition of the different information exchanges, and other documents as the task information delivery plans, master information delivery plans, the level of information need that will meet at each of the different stages. And similarly, what is the plan on how are we going to hand over all that information to the next phase, which is usually the construction stage, and how are we going to help them throughout the construction supervision or the project management during that stage, and finally on how they hand over using the asset information requirements from the client and how the contractor could meet them for facility management and operations.
Okay, fantastic, Juan. So in your maturity, BIM maturity at KEO, have you reached a stage where now, am I hearing that the BIM is a default tool process irrespective of whether or not client mandates it during the bidding process, for example?
Yeah, that is correct. BIM is the standard way that we deliver our projects. We don't see a need of a client for us to be proactive on that sense. So similarly as what I was referring earlier, we are very proactive. We see the benefits internally. In case that clients demand for specific requirements, if they have any specific exchange information requirements, we'll have to align the standard way that we deliver our projects in case that there is any variance in their needs. But it's something that we see the benefit day by day, and therefore we don't have the need of client mandating for us to deliver in BIM. Something that we are always very proactive and that we see the benefits internally.
That's great to hear, because I get a lot of people around the world sometimes asking the question that how can we or should we implement BIM if we don't have any client mandate? And your answer to that question is yes, absolutely, right? Because you see internally using BIM as a tool, as a process to reap the benefits like what? Like productivity, efficiency, consistency, collaboration, all of them?
Yes, all of them, and also this integration between all of our internal stakeholders. So all that efficiency that we see, we know that at the end of the day, we will deliver a better product to our clients because of the time savings, because of the consistency, because of how we better collaborate between different parties. We know that most of our projects, KEO is not the sole stakeholder involved, so collaboration is really important always. We'll have to collaborate even with manufacturers, as simple as that as well. This collaboration doesn't stop only with the design or contractors or the client. Even we are seeing an increased maturity in manufacturers, and all that increased collaboration at the end of the day will create a better end product. And we see that as what we deliver to our clients, we want to be seen as a high quality end product. And that's the way that we will use it internally to make sure that that happens.
Yeah. So you see, I'm hearing, you see BIM as a differentiator as well, because it allows you to be, sort of better at what you do, and delivering and everything.
Yes, that is correct.
So your strong advice to people on the call, but also whoever is going to listen to this conversation afterwards, is that $1 million question, that if the client doesn't mandate BIM, should we implement BIM? Your answer is straightforward, yes, because there are plenty of benefits for any, not only design consultancy practice, but if you're a subcontractor, if you're a main contractor, or even a product manufacturer you mentioned, there are plenty of benefits to be gained by implementing BIM internally, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's something that we promote a lot, so that others will continue the similar journey as what we have done. And the companies who will wait for that to be mandated either by authorities or clients will be at some point late in the adoption of the technology. Of course, there are always early adopters, the people who adopt technology, let's say, in the midterm, and the late adopters. I believe that people who will be a late adopter of BIM technologies and processes will be in a very complicated position at some point, because this is a journey. It's something that you cannot implement from one day to the next. You have to go step by step, increase your experience and knowledge and expertise on the use of the software, on the use of the standards, understanding certain processes. And of course, all of that cannot be achieved in a short term. You have to have a long-term plan where you will go step by step in order to increase that maturity. So I will recommend companies who has not adopted BIM to be proactive, to start as soon as possible, to have a clear roadmap, a vision, so that they can have a clear direction. And of course, rely on experts who have that experience already, will help them to be successful as well in that journey.
Fantastic. So that's great to hear that you achieved that default position, Juan, in KEO, that irrespective of client mandate or other stakeholders using BIM or not, KEO continues to use BIM to drive better quality, better outcomes for the project and for clients. But do you face I mean, think about any project, do you face any challenges in implementing BIM when, say, you are the only design consultant using BIM and the rest of the projects? I'm sure you must have come across this type of scenario, right? I'm really curious about, now that that you mentioned that BIM is a default position at KEO, which is great. Mm-hmm. How do you go about implementing on a project where it's not mandated by clients, and let's say most of the other stakeholders are not engaged in that process either? How do you get the best out of that? That would be really interesting for the audience to hear as well. How do you get best out of that scenario for the client?
Yeah, so as you said, there are always challenges. So we always try to see all these challenges as opportunities. The biggest challenge is always people, and at the end of the day, it's not about having the latest technology. It's not about embracing the latest standards and processes. It's about the people. People is the most important asset that we have, and the people is the people is who actually drive all of this use of technology and implementing the standards. So in that regards, we embrace them. We embrace the different people involved. We ensure that they are properly trained, that they have the resources, that they understand what are the benefits for them as well. They need to see some, not all of them, but some of them, they need to realize of the benefits of changing the way that they've been working in the past. As you know, some people might be more reluctant than others on changing the way that they have worked. So that's the most important for us, to make sure that we embrace people. We ensure that they are part of the team, that they see the benefits by themselves. That's really, really important to us. Other challenges might come, as you know, some companies might see BIM as an added cost. And this is something that, as an example, we don't have any added cost if we deliver our projects either in one way or another. It's our standard way of delivering, and this is something that we try as well to mature the different stakeholders so that they don't see as an added cost of delivering the projects on BIM, because the different benefits that they will realize, they will at the end of the day see that there is no added cost, and in fact there might be even an optimized cost of the resources, or how do we collaborate with other stakeholders.
Well, that's really good point you made that. Because yeah, we hear that a lot as well, don't we? You know, in terms of BIM as a cost versus is a benefit, you know, to the organization if used properly. Great insight. Thank you so much. I'm sure our audience will benefit from this insight because, you know, achieving that maturity, and it's a journey. I completely agree with you, Juan. You know, and people must not underestimate that how long that journey could be. When did you say you started 2009 at KEO, right? Your first pilot project, and here we are after, you know, sort of 12, 13 years, and you achieved that default position. There is only one way we do project, which is BIM, right? So there is no discussions in the business whether we should use BIM or not, and it will be costly or not, right? So it's great to hear that, and it would be definitely beneficial for the audience. So you mentioned implementing BIM in your experience, and particularly at KU as well. It's about not only technology. Technology plays a big part, of course, but it's about people, and it's about processes as well. And people drives those, you know, technology and processes, right? So help me understand a little bit about now, you know, the importance of BIM as a process, right? And what are the tools or framework that you use to drive that process at KEO?
Mm-hmm. So how we see it and how we do it as a process, we have all our different standards to be used as part of this tender response that I was referring. We have our own templates that refers to what needs to be done through the tender response, what type of documents and standards to be used throughout the design stage, as well as throughout the project management, in case that we've been asked to do that as well in design and construction and operations. We have all these templates and standards, which are the drivers for the teams to understand what needs to be done, what needs to be followed in terms of similarly naming convention. As simple as the naming convention, information management is really important. And the driver of having a properly set up common data environment is really important to us. So our common data environment is one of the facilitators of these processes on how do we structure our information as per the ISO standards, from information to be hosted in the work in progress container, shared and published and archive container. And our CDE help us to structure all that information. How do we collaborate? How do we ensure that the information that is being shared has a purpose, has a meaning for the others to collaborate? And similarly, we embrace other stakeholders involved, including the client, to participate in our CDE, so that we ensure a consistency on the use on the information, not only internally, but also externally with other consultants, with other stakeholders as manufacturers, or as the client as well. So the CDE for us is the core that drives all of these standardization and communication and coordination between the different parties.
Okay, thank you. So how do you ensure? So it sounds like really good process-driven implementation, you know, and very mature templates, you know, and CDEs and information management framework. You get clients involved, you know, project stakeholders involved in that too. Do you use any international sort of best practice to enable that within KEO? Do you use any international framework to enable that? What?
So yes, so our framework is the ISO 19650 standards. We've been implementing it since the year 2009, so it's been more than 3 years for us implementing this framework. And that's the main driver. In the past, we were using the UK standards as the PAS 1192 series, as well as other standards, which actually are the main starting point for the development of the ISO standards and are quite close one to the other. So for us, that's been the driver, the framework that we are using. And it is really important to be an international framework so that, as we said, we collaborate with companies all over the world, from the US to Australia to Europe. And we know that most of these companies, they adopt similarly the same international standards. So in that way, we ensure that we all speak the same language, that we follow the same processes, the same standards, and that we make it easier for everyone to collaborate.
Okay, it's good to hear that adoption of ISO 19650 as an international sort of good practice, best practice, is increasing now. And you clearly, started with that. One of the early adopters, already, 2019. I think, the first suite of ISO 19650 were published back end of, I think, December 2018 or something. So quite, like at the forefront of adopting that international framework-based approach to the templates and processes, which is really good. This is a slightly cheeky, follow-up question on these then. So since you already have ISO 19650 adopted, the templates and everything, and you mentioned in your presentation, Juan, that you proudly, presented that you achieved a BSI kite mark for ISO 19650. Just help me understand the relevance of it to KEO, because you already have adopted that, or had adopted that, ISO 19650 based templates and processes, and sounds like it's been quite a process-driven approach at KEO. So what's the relevance of that BSI BIM kite mark that you proudly presented to us, to KEO?
So for us, it's really important to give an evidence that we follow the processes. BSI is one of the top best companies recognized all over the world about ensuring that the verification of the application of the standards is being achieved successfully. We go every year through an extensive review by the BSI auditors to ensure that we apply these standards in our projects. And this is something that we see as a good way internally as well to ensuring that we follow the standards. Having an external company at this level being recognized globally that ensure that we follow the processes set as per the ISO 19650 framework. It's really important to us. It will provide confidence as well to our clients that we are following these processes and guidelines. And we see that as well as a differentiator in the market. Not all consultants might have this qualification, and it's something that, as well as with adoption of technology, for us it's really important to be a differentiator as well in adoption of standards and processes, and to be verified by a recognized global company.
Okay. Thanks for sharing the insight. We have a very interesting question in the chat box, which I hope you don't mind me asking. One, can we consider the future of BIM? So what does the future look like, and is BIM perfect now? If it is, then well, just get on with it and do it. Or do you see any challenges, Juan, that with the given BIM maturity, with the ISO 19650 technology, skill sets and everything, do you think it is perfect now, or there are still some challenges that the industry need to be mindful of when implementing BIM within their businesses? And so it's a two-part question. Is it perfect now? If so, just get on with it and do it. There's nothing to argue about. And what do you see the future of BIM as you stand now? Two-part question.
Okay. So taking the first part, if BIM is perfect now. So I will make a reference to what it was earlier said about the BIM maturity levels as what the past standard defined from BIM level 0 to BIM level 3. The UK mandated BIM level 2, and even they didn't define all the stands of what BIM level 3 was. Now with the ISO 19650 standards, they have defined different approach of this maturity level, and you will find that there is still one step more to complete the full maturity on the adoption of BIM. So we still have room for improvement on the adoption of BIM, similarly to every company should be doing or having this vision, this plan, or where do they want to go and the steps that they need to do. Similarly, even these international standards have set different maturity levels, which is currently at a level that is not completed yet. So BIM is still evolving, will continue to evolve, and it's something that we'll see improvements in the way that we collaborate and even with the standardization. The other part of the question is, if you can remind me, Rahul, sorry.
So what are the next steps? I mean, it's good to, I think it's a nice segue you mentioning. So I think you answered the first part. Is it perfect? No, right? Okay, I mean, there is still a room for improvement, and we can do a lot more. But what's the next step? How do you see the future, in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? Where do you see BIM evolving, going?
And how I see BIM evolving is more about the maturity of the industry itself. That's where I see technology is at a point of maturity that it's going faster than the adoption by the different stakeholders involved. And the next step will be to increase the maturity on all different parties, from asset owners to manufacturers to contractors to consultants. I think the next step for us for the industry to improve, to do better, is to get a higher adoption. And of course, a higher adoption globally. As I said, depending on which part of the world you are, you may see a different maturity adoption. And that's something that is important as well, that the adoption is growing similarly across different parts of the world. And this is where I see BIM improving in the next 3 to 5 years, so that the maturity across all different stakeholders involved will grow, and we'll see more naturally the use of or implementation of BIM as the standard practice, as what we see now.
Thanks, Juan, and thanks, Bilal, for asking that question. We got good questions coming through now. So let's just look at the Q&A box and see. There are some interesting questions there asked by Muhammad as well. First one is very important, actually, Juan, and it would be great to get your thoughts on is that since you described KEO's journey, started in 2009, and where you are now in 13 years, default position is BIM, all those things. What's your advice to someone who is just starting implementing BIM in their business?
Well, first of all, it's really important to have the support from the management. That's the first recommendation that I will give anyone. With support of the management, it will be difficult to achieve certain goals and objectives. That's one of the most critical points. Of course, once you have the buy-in from the higher management, is to have an understanding of where the business want to go, understanding of where they are at the starting point, what are their needs in terms of training, upskilling, adoption of standards, understanding what resources they have, if they have to have someone as a champion leading the process, identifying all these different stakeholders within the business. Once you have an understanding of all of these different considerations is to create this implementation plan where you will have to set goals throughout different stages, starting from usually is the most common practice, starting from a pilot project, and then involving the people in the business to have a better understanding for them of what is happening, where the company would like to go. Is really important as well, as I mentioned earlier. Engaging people within the company is really important so that they feel that they're part of this journey as well. It's as important as the other topics of training, skilling, adopting standards, identifying the right champions and leaders within the company. I think that having all that considerations will help to a successful BIM implementation.
Thank you, Juan. It's really, really important to establish that starting point, isn't it? As you mentioned, where you are at the moment in your journey, or where you are in the business. Assess the resources, assess what you have available in terms of skill sets, IT, establish that roadmap or implementation plan, right? And have some goals and targets. And perhaps what I heard initially from you also, start with small pilot projects, right? Start small, think big, but start small and act now, right? So don't, so think big, of course, you have your 5 years vision or what have you, in terms of implementing BIM, but start small is your advice. So thank you for that one. And Mohammed, thank you for asking the question also. And I think you have a couple of other questions, which I think we've been answered. One of the questions is, Juan, how to convince the clients and owners to implement BIM in project. Well, Juan already answered that, Mohammed, that actually look inward first. If there is no client mandate, look at your own benefits. Be selfish, look at your own benefits of implementing BIM and start from that as a starting point rather than, trying to convince the clients or owners or other project stakeholders, because there are plenty of benefits. So, start with you. Of course, there will be cost, as Juan mentioned, correct, Juan, implementing, but then the benefits would be, would outweigh that initial investment and cost. Correct, Juan?
Yeah, that's correct. As you said, so some people might see it as what is the investment needed at the forefront. So, and similarly, we see that a lot with asset owners as well, with other initiatives. As a good example, as I see the implementation of something that is on the mouth of everyone about digital twins. We all know that there is a cost at the forefront, but it is really important that people, when ultimate technology, have a vision at the longer term, not just a short term of what is the forefront cost, but having a longer vision of what are you going to achieve at the short, medium, and long term as well.
Yeah, thanks, Juan. And I'm conscious of time as well. I think we've got 7 minutes left. So just a 1 or 2 questions last. You mentioned digital twin. Short answer. Do you see BIM an important part of achieving the digital twin vision in the industry?
I think in BIM, it's an integral part of the digital twins. It's not, we should differentiate what is a digital twin and what is BIM. They are not the same, but of course, adopting a digital twin could be enhanced by the use of BIM across the project life cycle and this handover to operations that will make it easier and simpler to implement a digital twin for any asset owner. And definitely we have to make sure that we differentiate what are both. About digital twins, I always like to insist that for people to understand the different maturity levels as well of the digital twins, at what do we want to achieve out of them.
Okay, thank you. And one last question, I promise, and then would be happy to hand over to Colleen. You mentioned early on in the conversation about sustainability, waste reduction, optimizing resources. And I completely agree with you that as a sector, we have a huge opportunity in front of us as a sector to tackle that world's biggest sustainability challenges, right? How do you see BIM supporting the industry in tackling sustainability challenges?
Yeah, I see sustainability not only as most people might see as the optimization on the use of renewable energies or as the energy optimization. I see as well sustainability as the optimization of the resources that we use in terms of information sharing and information management. How do we avoid rework? Rework is one of the highest pain points in the industry. Of course, the rework at the later stage will increase the cost and the waste. And this is one of the keys, in my opinion, where BIM can help to reduce that rework and waste, as well as on the information management and how do we collaborate between all the stakeholders so that we avoid this rework at different levels, either in the production of the information or during the building process as well. So by using BIM, I think that could help in that regards on reducing the waste at different levels.
Yeah, that's massive. Those 2 points itself is massive, right? Because we as a sector consume a lot of natural resources, the materials, right? So if we can optimize the resource usage, that's one. But also, reducing rework could also, help us in terms of, all the solid waste going to landfills and, the environment, problems because of that. So fantastic. Thank you so much. So, look, I think, yeah, we could go on and on for hours on this one, and I'm sure audience would love that too, but unfortunately we'll have to call it a day. So thank you so much for your time today and being with us and sharing your insights, Juan. Thank you.
No, thank you, Rahul, and thank you to BSI for the invite, and I hope that the attendees found this conversation useful as well. And of course, as I think Pelin mentioned at the beginning,
I would now like to hand over to
thank you, Juan.
We lost you for a few seconds there, but now.
Yeah, no worries.
Yes, thank you, Juan and Raul, for this great discussion. Now I would like to give our audience a chance to express their demand if they want to contact BSI to discuss their needs around BIM. It could be BIM Kite certification, BIM trainings, or both. So thank you again for attending this session, and we are looking forward to see you in our next webinars. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.